Father Seraphim Aldea is a priest monk living on the island of Mull in the Scottish islands of the Hebrides. He was born and raised and educated in Romania. After his early education, he went to England to work on his doctorate at the University of Durham, where he worked on the theology of the great elder Sophrony. Father Seraphim is currently in Scotland establishing the first Orthodox monastery in Scotland in over 1,000 years, and he could use our help. There are links below this video to his website where you can find out how you can help him. He also conducts pilgrimages every summer to Orthodox sites in Scotland, so if you're interested in that, you can find links there too. Father Seraphim also podcasts on Ancient Faith Radio Through a Monk's Eyes, which is a podcast I've come to enjoy a great deal. So I hope you'll enjoy this episode from my interview with Hieromonk Seraphim.
Begin with another section of that question, because for me that's where it all begins. How does one get about finding one? I think is the most important question. And I should start very simply by saying that not everyone needs a spiritual father. It's very, very clear. Not everyone needs a spiritual father. And the best example... You see, when I say something like that, people say, oh, that's because I'm not worthy of a spiritual father, or because my spirituality is kind of not deep enough, I don't require a spiritual father. So it always comes with this assumption that people who do have or do need a spiritual father are somehow better, as you know, in their spiritual life than the ones who don't have or don't need a spiritual father. But for those people, I can only say, keep in mind that perhaps the greatest saint of the 20th century, Saint Silouan the Atonite, did not have a spiritual father. He never had one. In all his life, he simply, when he needed to make a confession, he would go into the church of the monastery of Saint Panteleimon on the Holy Mountain, and make his confession to whichever of the priests of the monastery happened to be on duty for that day. Because in any monastery, priests take turns, and one will celebrate this week, the other one the following week, and so on. So he would just go in and make his confession to whoever was there. And if Saint Silouan, again, not by my estimation, because who am I to make these statements, but by the estimation of people who have met him, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest saint that the 20th century has known. If he could become that without a spiritual father, there's no need to feel like you're second grade or, second quality if you don't have one. If you do need a spiritual father, God will send you one. And we spoke about it a bit last night. I've only found my spiritual father when I was literally on the verge of just losing my life in a most physical way. And when that need was there, I didn't even have to look for one. I didn't know they existed. And God told me they existed, and he sent me to one priest, and that first priest that I ever met turned out to be my spiritual father. For me, a spiritual father is someone in whose judgment you trust more than your own judgment. It's as simple as that. And that's not to say that you are supposed to become a sort of child. The point is not that you deny your own experience or your own thoughts or your own wisdom, but that you approach someone else with humility and in complete readiness to submit your will to his will. And if you do that, what happens is that God kind of always There's almost no need for your spiritual father to impose his will upon you when you have that approach, because God is already giving you the right thought from the very beginning. He is a safety net for people who need safety nets, in a way. I don't know what else. There was more in that question, but I forgot. What happens if your spiritual father is not your... There are so many ways in which that can be played, and it can go from a complete nightmare to something that functions absolutely normally. I mean, your parish priest can be the one who hears your confession, and then your spiritual father is the one you go to for advice concerning your life of prayer, for advice concerning, I don't know, the big choices in your life. And by big choices, I don't mean, I have to buy a new car, what car should I get? Or I want to move house, where should I move? Of course, you can do that as well if you want to, but that's rather, I don't know. I've never felt comfortable when people approach me with those questions. A spiritual father's purpose is to be a spiritual father. So if you have a spiritual question, go and seek a question from a spiritual father. If you have a question about a car, go to somebody who works in a garage and ask for advice. Don't forget that many of the spiritual fathers are actually spiritual mothers. So by definition, they don't have to be your priest, or they are simple monks. Indeed, I mean, in Romania, they can be just lay people. We have examples of lay people who became spiritual leaders for the world. And in Russia as well. I mean, a lot of lay women that we now recognize as saints. And so it all depends on the same thing, which is the foundation of everything in our lives, the humility. The humility of your parish priest, the humility of your spiritual father. They both have to recognize the place of each one. And then your own humility, because if you are going to... It's very easy to destroy that relationship. Very easy. Either by becoming too friendly with one of them, and that's something I strongly advise everyone against. Do not become the friend of your spiritual father or of your parish priest. Support them. Do everything you can to support them, to help the church. Just go out of your way to help, but do not become their friends. Because the friendship comes with familiarity, and familiarity comes with a lot of dangers. It may seem like it's helpful in the beginning, but when the going goes tough, or whatever that expression is, gets tough, then you need someone in whom you can trust 100%. And familiarity usually gets in the way of that full trust.
Should Father Marcus have any friends?
Yes, but not in his parish. I pray to God he has friends.
They don't like me anyway.
That's such a blessing, Father. That's such a blessing.
What happens when you get an attitude towards your spiritual father? How do you deal with that? Have you ever got mad?
Oh, yes.
And it's made you where you can't pray and you feel like, I need to go talk to him to deal with this. How do you do that?
My spiritual father only twice raised his voice at me, first of all. Once it had to do with the Mother of God, and I said something that he just didn't like, in confession, and he just cut me short immediately. And then something else that had to do with my own private life. So from him, I don't know. I mean, again, being so weak as I am, God sent me a spiritual father who is pretty much like my grandmother rather than anything else. I mean, on Mother's Day, I call him before I call my mother. On Mother's Day, because that's how I perceive him. He's so kind and so gentle, and he goes out of his way to make me feel welcome and to make sure that when I leave, I'm full of hope and optimism. And it rarely happened that things went bad. There were moments before I entered the monastery, at the very beginning, so the first 3-4 years, and now looking back, I understand he was kind of trying me out to see, is he actually able to survive in a monastery or not? So he was pretty much playing the abbot with me in a parish setting. And those were a bit difficult. Things like he would completely ignore me. He would go into church, walk through the middle of the church towards the altar, greet everybody, hug everybody, speak to everybody, and just completely ignore me. He wouldn't give me time in confession. He would always postpone or delay my confession. He would look completely uninterested in confession, like looking about while I was pouring my heart and so on. Now looking back, I understand why he was doing it, and he stopped doing it the minute I entered my monastery. But that taught me that confession is not really about me and him. I've had to learn to make my confession to Christ in front of this person who's paying no attention to me. I've had to trust that he loves me even if he completely ignores me. I've had to you have to make these choices. Things don't happen just because, I've decided he is my spiritual father. You have to make him into a spiritual father. You have to turn him into a spiritual father by not letting go no matter what. Otherwise, I just said, I have to trust him more than I trust myself. If he chooses for 3 months to completely ignore me, I have to trust that there is a reason there. And I choose to believe that if I just keep my head down and I push through it, at the end of all of it, there is something that I shall be given. And I was never wrong. I mean, a spiritual father is supposed to tempt us, is supposed to show, kind of reveal to ourselves our own limitations. Otherwise, we would think we are perfect. Just never let go. I mean, I think of myself in relation to him and to Christ, actually, as a bulldog. Those dogs that kind of grab you by the throat and they just don't let go. You may, even big animals, they just grab that animal by the throat and then that animal just kind of goes and kicks, but they just don't let go. That's how I think of myself and Christ. Just grab him and never let go, no matter what. Because whatever comes from Christ or from your spiritual father can only be for your salvation. Whatever.
Hello again. Hope you enjoyed this episode from my interview with Hieromonk Seraphim Aldea. Please let me know what you thought of the video in the comment section below. And please subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available, which happens every Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.